I had to file a sexual harassment claim against a professor at Oxford. I had to go through the rather grueling process of an investigation.
That's from a YouTube video by an American student who did her master's degree at Oxford University in 2019. But like so many women, she found her academic career almost derailed by a male professor.
I had to avoid going to certain events because I didn't want to run into him, and that broke my heart.
When she spoke up and reported him, she found the university system seemed more focused on protecting their reputation than hers.
The clip that you just heard is from a podcast which went live last Tuesday by Al Jazeera as part 2 of an investigation of sexual harassment and abuse within UK universities. The parts where you hear my voice are from a YouTube video that I posted about a year ago on my YouTube channel, vaguely detailing my experiences with sexual harassment at Oxford and having had to file an investigative claim. My claim was made alongside that of my colleague Mia and 5 tutors at Oxford, so 5 faculty members. Peter Thompson was found guilty of drunkenness and sexual harassment of a student, that student being myself. In the days that have followed the podcast going live, several women have gone on Twitter and approached myself or Mia to state how they have had interactions with him that have made them uncomfortable. In this video, I want to address a couple different things. One was the timing of this podcast being released. 2, I want to talk about my own experiences, not just in my interactions with him, but more specifically in the investigative process at Oxford, as well as discussing next steps and how it is that we are acting in order to change the environment for students in the future. One question that has not been asked of me, but I have been asking of myself is why now? Why come forward on social media and call him out and call out the university for its inaction, and more specifically to the history faculty for its inability to act accordingly to the investigative process and to accordingly protect students in the future. Last year, when I received the letter from the investigator telling us what the results were going to be and that all of our complaints had been upheld, I wanted to move on. I wanted to move forward with my career. I felt that if I continued to engage in this issue, that it would have implications for my academic career. I had just been accepted to Yale and I didn't want to jeopardize my reputation or my ability to succeed in this program. In addition to that, when we received the news, I had been in conversation with Mia since the very beginning, and I'll detail all of the events that transpired and how it is that we work together along with our tutors in order to file this claim. But when we spoke, she had said specifically that she was going to contact journalists, and I said that at the moment I was not ready, or that I wasn't sure if I would ever be ready. At the time, I was starting at Yale, and as I said before, was deeply concerned that if this were to break in the news, that it would have significant ramifications for my academic career and my interactions with faculty at Yale. And I had dealt with so many of the difficulties of having filed the claim in the first place that I didn't feel that I was strong enough to also weather that particular storm. However, it has been over a year since we received the decision. It has been about a week since the news broke about this investigation, and it is time to speak up. It is time for change. I refuse to stand by and allow these things to keep happening. Students deserve to be protected. They deserve to be in an academic environment where their only goal is to learn and not to shield themselves from abuse. My experience at Oxford has had lasting implications for myself, for my mental health, my academic career, my personal relationships, etc. It has a lasting impact on the way that I approach my work. It has a lasting impact on who it is that I interact with in the academy. And I have had to go to administrators in my department and warn them about this news breaking out about something that occurred at Oxford and that I had hoped would not have an impact on my future. However, the one thing that I was mistaken about was thinking that I had moved past this event and that I had emotionally managed to work through the things that had happened. I was wrong. I was not okay when the news broke, and I have experienced more anxiety in the past week than I have in a very long time. Those fears stem from it affecting my professional career that I have put so much effort into, but underlying that is my deep love of research and of history, and feeling that if this were to break, that it was going to have serious ramifications on my ability to continue performing as a student. However, in the past week, I have also experienced some of the most support that I've ever experienced in my entire life. I have heard from academics who I greatly admire, and they have voiced their support both from Yale as well as beyond. I want to specifically thank Mia for having gone to the press and for being brave enough to actually speak with journalists about her experience and about our experience with this investigation. And I also want to specifically call and thank the tutors who complained alongside us, and specifically my advisor, Catherine Paw, for having stood by me. Reliving this has not been easy. Having to remember all of the feelings that I had while I was at Oxford of feeling unsafe, feeling like I could not be in a room with Professor Thompson. Again, I thought I had moved past those emotions, but I am coming to realize that these events have and will have continued effects in years to come. However, by remaining silent and by not speaking to this event and only ever referring to it in vague terms, I have given it so much power. And now I've decided that in order for me personally and for the people in my life to move past this, I have to talk about it openly, and that I need to voice the things that occurred and the experiences that we had, so that way hopefully this doesn't happen to someone else. The message behind this video is not necessarily about my experience or about our experience filing this claim against one professor. It isn't about him. It is about the system at Oxford and at other universities in the US, in the UK, that protect people that wield power to the detriment of students, and the administration that continues to keep them shielded and that continues to allow them to remain in their post even after allegations of sexual harassment have been found to be true. When I arrived at Oxford in 2019, I was so excited to learn from some of the leading scholars in my field. And in my subfield, which is colonial early American history, there are two professors at Oxford. That includes Catherine Paw and Peter Thompson. My advisor was Catherine Paw, and when I first met with Peter Thompson, I immediately felt intimidated by him, not only because he was a senior academic, but also because he wielded so much authority in the classroom, which is not uncommon, but the way that he spoke in a seminar and the way that he presented information or arguments really left no room for other voices. Within the first couple weeks at Oxford, there was an event at the Rothmere American Institute. And during this lecture, Mia had an interaction with a couple of the DPhil students who warned her about Peter Thompson. This information was relayed to me, and at the time, I had already had a meeting scheduled with him. During the first historiographical seminar, he had asked about our research. I told him about my interest in matrilineal descent and slave law in colonial America. He had mentioned that he had sources that I should be looking into and to reach out to him for a meeting, which I did. And we had a meeting set by the time that I had heard about his conduct in the department. When I went to meet with him, my personal space was invaded. I felt that he was using my interest in returning to the United States for a PhD to his advantage. He had spoken about how he could be essentially my meal ticket into a PhD program. He said that my work was important and that he would do anything that he could in order to help me, which was very flattering, of course. But as our interactions continued, I realized that there were repercussions, or that there may be repercussions for that type of attention or that type of support. He also disparaged my advisor, saying that she had just had a child and that she might be too busy for me and that I should come work with him. I found that this suggestion was unprofessional given that she was his colleague, and I also felt that this was an abuse of power. I considered actually reading the statement that I submitted to the investigator. However, I have chosen not to, mostly because I do not want to relive reading my investigative memorandum, but also because at the end of the day, what happened was not nearly as severe as that experienced by other victims of sexual harassment. My experience was that of being made uncomfortable. He made a comment about how I should remain there for a PhD, and in a public setting, he said that he should tie me to a chair in the library to keep me there. And my response to his actions was that of fear and concern for my safety, as well as my integrity as a student and as a future academic in this field. When all of this occurred, I went to Mia and one of the other female students in my cohort, voicing my concerns and my feelings of discomfort. From there, Mia said that she would stand by me. She said that she had seen these interactions, she had seen the way that he interacted with me in the classroom, and that she would also come forward and would write her own complaint. In addition, she went to one of her tutors that she had known from undergrad and voiced her concerns, to which effect he said that he knew of similar allegations and that there had been a complaint back in 2017 written by the faculty about his drunken behavior in the classroom. Around the time that she spoke with her tutors, I went to my advisor. I went to Catherine specifically to say that I wanted to find a way to not be in the same room with him if there was any way that I could avoid him. She asked what had occurred, and I told her, because she was somebody that I trusted in the department. From that point on, she was my most important support beyond Mia, my family, and my friends. She then stated that she was unaware that this was also happening to other people. I do not know what happened between her and Professor Thompson. However, she did choose to sign a complaint as well, which led to a larger investigation than would have been possible if it had just been myself and another student. From there, we spoke to Sloan Mahoney, who was one of the sexual harassment officers within the history department, and I had a meeting with her and John Watts in early November. During that meeting, I was assured by John Watts that the matter would be taken incredibly seriously and that the department themselves would handle the investigation, and that we would not need to come forward formally and have our names tied to the investigation, and that action would be taken against Peter Thompson. We were sworn protection. We were sworn to be taken seriously, and in the month that followed, it became very clear that the only priority of the department was to save face and to keep Peter Thompson on faculty. A couple days later, we received an email from John Watts and Sloan Mahoney stating that in order for there to be action taken against Peter Thompson, we would need to file a formal investigation. This is something I mulled over for a long time. Because a formal investigation requires that you not retain your anonymity, you are required to meet with an investigator from a third-party department, and it is handled formally by the Student Affairs Office. Furthermore, the punishment of the faculty member in question is later held to that of the faculty, which is important because the faculty has not acted. We were assured that it would take about 6 weeks for an investigator to be found and for our testimony to be taken. It took several months. We were not able to meet with an investigator until February, and we were not given a decision on the investigation until June. The original submission date and completion of the master's degree was meant to be around June 15th. It is important to note the end of the investigation timeline, primarily because that meant that there was absolutely nothing that we could do as students completing our degrees to ensure that the faculty was going to act and that punishment for his actions would be required. But I want to talk a little bit about the actual act of meeting with the investigator. So we were told that it would take 6 weeks. It ended up taking quite a bit longer. I don't exactly remember how long, but I will say that we did have winter break, which did disrupt the timeline. But we met with the investigator in February. I believe I was accepted to Yale at this point because I do remember speaking with the investigator about how this was going to impact my future career. And I do remember specifically stating that luckily the time of the investigation fell past when I had been accepted. So the actual meeting took place in February. I wish I had the exact dates for you. However, I no longer have access to my Oxford email, so I have no way of tracking my correspondence with the investigator. However, we were asked to go to the essentially student affairs office where there was the investigator and someone to act as the scribe, and I also was allowed to bring a colleague. Mia personally brought a colleague of hers that was familiar with the legalities. However, for me, I brought a friend that I felt could be a good emotional support and had been with me through the entire process. Overall, the questions were relatively mild. However, the one that always will stick out to me was being asked whether I thought that Professor Thompson's use of certain language might be because of a cultural difference between the United States and the UK. In the field of early American history, use of the word quote unquote primitive in discussing indigenous history, especially in early America, is just seen as entirely unprofessional and racist. And this was a particular comment that he had made, and this was based on a particular comment that he had made about the work of a previous professor I had worked with, and in the description of specific indigenous texts from the Iroquois Confederacy. I was also asked whether I thought that his behavior was inappropriate because I was from America and therefore was not used to the academic culture. This is something I had mentioned in my statement in response to Peter Thompson's first email to me. In the email where he had recommended that we go to the library together, I remembered thinking that perhaps this was something that was more common at UK universities or at Oxford, because I had never experienced nor had I heard of anybody going to a library with a professor or someone's advisor. I thought that that seemed a little bit odd. At the time, I thought perhaps this is because I am unfamiliar with the system and therefore it's just a little bit more casual here. I had heard of people going and having lunch or having a drink with their advisors. I have gone for coffee with the professors. I have gone to professors' houses where other people are in attendance, but I have never gone to a sit down meeting one-on-one at a pub or at a library with a professor, and so this just seemed odd to me. However, the question was directed at my entire response to what had occurred, not just my response to that one email. After my meeting with Professor Thompson, where we did go to the library, I immediately felt that the interactions were inappropriate, that my personal space had been invaded, and that I was uncomfortable about being around him. This was not a difference in academic culture between the United States and the UK. I really did feel uncomfortable and I did feel unsafe in his presence, and that was something I relayed to the investigator. But being questioned about the integrity of my experience or my feelings of discomfort was the part that I found the most difficult to work through. I'm trying my best to relay this information without getting emotional because these are incredibly difficult memories for me to have to relive, but I think it's important for me to discuss them because in this process of going through this grueling investigation, we were given many mixed signals and messages from the faculty, from the investigator, from everybody involved. And we were also told that we would be protected from having to be in the same room with Peter Thompson. There was no way necessarily for them to regulate the public events that he was in attendance at the Rothmere American Institute. And I ultimately just stopped going. There was one instance that I talked about in my previous video where I was given the opportunity to respond to a significant lecture that I really wanted to be a part of. I ultimately did not end up providing the public comment or even attending at all because Peter Thompson was in attendance and he was a panelist. I missed out on various opportunities as a graduate student at Oxford and went into tens of thousands of dollars in debt in order to attend. I do not take the decision that I made or that we made as a collective to file this formal investigation lightly. Like I said, I committed a significant amount of money, time, opportunity in attending this particular program, and I felt like my experience was significantly clouded by my interactions with Professor Thompson and specifically the investigation that transpired afterward. I honestly think that the act of having to go through this investigation and feeling like the institution was not taking it seriously and that the history faculty was not going to act accordingly was perhaps the hardest part of this whole experience. Having interacted with Professor Thompson and being made to feel incredibly uncomfortable in his presence was part of it. But considering that our complaints were upheld in this investigation and that no action was taken to regulate his presence as a faculty member at Oxford is one of the most disheartening and honestly disrespectful things that could have happened in result of this particular investigation. There are investigations far-reaching at Oxford and other institutions that get swept under the rug. This investigation was seen through as a formal complaint by several people, both students and faculty members. It was found accurate. He was found guilty of the charges, and yet he remains on faculty. He remains in a position where he is able to teach students alone. He still attends events at the RAI, as far as I'm aware. All of this to say that the university has done little to nothing to protect future students, and they did nothing in response to this investigation. They stated that any punishment that would take place was to be confidential, and although they may have stated or felt that they took action, the fact that he remains on faculty in his position at St. Cross College and with no visible professional repercussions, we now need to act. I have spoken with Mia and others involved in this investigation, as well as others who have been made to feel uncomfortable by his presence at Oxford and beyond. I am calling upon my viewers to show your support and sign an open letter to the faculty requiring that they reform their policies of investigative action and that they review the position of Peter Thompson on their faculty. I remained silent for a year. I have been living with the weight of this ever since those events took place in 2019. And now it is time that I speak up. From now on, I will be discussing this matter publicly, and I will continue to push to make sure that the university is held accountable for their actions and that the history faculty reforms its policies. The podcast by Al Jazeera, my video, the open letter to the faculty, and this video itself are only the starting point for a long and hard path towards reform. Universities are there to provide us with knowledge and opportunity, not with abuse and lasting traumatic memories. If you would personally like to show your support, please check out the links below this video and continue staying in the loop by following me on Instagram. I will also have Mia linked down below, whose profile on Instagram is also public. If you too are experiencing abuse or sexual harassment in your university, I ask that you please reach out to your Title IX office or sexual harassment officers, as well as join a worldwide movement to end sexual harassment and abuse in academic spaces. The safety of students is of utmost importance, and I do not want anyone to experience what we did. If there's anything that I can do to support you or that you can do to support this movement, please reach out. My email and any other information that I am aware of will be provided down below. But if there are other resources that you are aware of, please comment them and send them to me so that way I can share them with this audience. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was likely long. I haven't edited it yet, so I don't quite know, but it doesn't end here. This will not be the last time that I speak about this. If you have questions, please let me know. I ask that you please refer your questions to my private email rather than the comment section. Thank you so much for watching and for your support. I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.